We are back with Scott Ballard. Scott, thank you for coming on Talk of the Town.
It's my pleasure to be here. It's an honor.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's my pleasure. I just met you just about an hour ago, a half hour ago, and I'm very, very impressed with what you have presented.
Well, thanks. It's just great to be back in Middlesboro, back at the Wellspring, if you will, my hometown.
Now, you're from here originally. You went through the educational system here, and you graduated in high school in when?
1982.
Wow.
1982, so it's been a few years.
A couple of years. We won't ask your age or anything like that, but I think they can probably get a calculator. And you're in great shape, by the way.
Thanks.
I understand you're a personal trainer as well.
Yeah, if you look at my resume, I think the first reaction you might have is, this dude's ADD. He's got a lot of things going on, but it really, I run a seasonal business over in North Carolina, which is, our county is the #1 producing Fraser fir Christmas tree county in the nation. And so I run a Christmas wreath business over there. And I don't think in the class of '82 in our yearbook we had a category for most likely to make a wreath. We didn't, they hadn't invented that yet. So, I mean, who would have thunk it, right? But that's a seasonal business. But what that does is that gives me the opportunity to do a lot of other things during the course of a year. And this is one of those things.
Wow. Now, before we get into that, I want to go kind of chronological. When you graduated, your family had a business and a radio station.
That's correct. My great-grandfather bought 20% share of WMIK in 1948, and my grandfather took that over, and then my father ran it. And so that was the family business.
Now, that was oldies, I think, at the time, right?
92.7, the FM was oldies, and the AM station was just your regular country and bluegrass.
So in 1948, how did they play oldies? Because music started about that time, didn't it?
I tell you what, I remember very clearly that the turntables had 3 settings, 45, 33, and 78. So we actually had the lacquer. We still had in the back lacquer records that were still playable. So yeah, but the thing was back then is that there was a lot of live music. Radio was still relatively in its infancy, and so a lot of the programming was simply live. It was right there in studio.
So you were a disc jockey there also.
Did sports, did Sunday night disc jockey, ended up coming back after college and did news and sports.
Where'd you go to college at?
DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana.
I've been there before. Yeah, DePaul is a good school.
Yeah.
Very good school, yes, yes.
The wind blows the snow this way.
It's just east of Indianapolis.
Correct.
Yep, I know exactly where it is. And you live in West Jefferson in North Carolina right now. And your passion is education. Now, you are a teacher?
If again, you look back through the resume and you're like, one of the things that I did was work as a teacher at an alternative high school for at-risk kids. And it was a personal renaissance for me because there's nothing like getting in front of a class of kids, skeptical kids, because you know the teenage years are that's the highlight of sarcasm, and that's the golden years of sarcasm. And to get in front of those kids and have plan A and plan B go down in flames. Seriously. So you have to think on your feet. You've got to be able to present and convince these kids that what you're putting before them is worthy of their attention. It was a huge transformation for me.
So you got into at-risk kids, so you are really kind of passionate about the educational system in terms of, I think the key word is motivating these kids.
These kids are not like they were when we were in school, and that applies to anybody who's gotten out of the school system within the last probably 10 years. We live in the most distracted culture that we've ever known, and so you can't just assume that these kids are going to be empty vessels and you're going to be a fount of knowledge and you're just going to pour information into them. We've got to connect as teachers. We have to connect to these kids. And a way to do that is to share your passion with these students. Share something that you're passionate about. And if they feel that excitement, what are they going to do? They're going to respond. Right,
in a positive way.
Exactly. So.
Very nice. When you say distracted, I was just thinking back in high school, back in 1970, 67 to 1970. Yeah, I'm a little older than you. You know, all the distraction we had was slide rules. I think shortly after that they came out with the calculators, electronic calculators, and I used to type in 9 times 9 and it would come out 81. It's like, Wow, how did it do that?
Right.
That was before computers, of course, at the time. But now, you know, all the distraction tools I have, including, you know, cell phones and texting and you know, social media, and I mean, it's very stressful on kids in school. You know, they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They try to look better, be the most popular kid, and it's a big distraction.
The opportunities for them to compare themselves and even compare themselves negatively are unprecedented. Now, the thing that I want to talk about in regards to that is the teacher education work that I do. That's the online education that I do right now. One of the things that I'm always telling the teachers that I work with, working professionals who need continuing education credits, is that there's no cookie cutter mold for what makes a great teacher. I wish there was, but there just simply isn't. But what they can be is they can be dynamic in their own way. And to do that, they've got to find something in their academic field of interest and become passionate about it. And that's where Golf for Grants comes in. That's the perfect segue
We'll
to that.
talk about that in the next segment.
Okay.
Golf for Grants is a big thing, and that's why you're here for, which is what we want to talk about, because that's sort of like the bold topic, you know, the #1 thing. But I still want to get into the education because I like what you say. I like the passion. But let me ask you something. Somebody who's teaching arithmetic or mathematics,
Yes.
how do you get passionate about that?
Okay. At the alternative school, we had to get these kids back up to speed. And that meant that every faculty person in the alternative school had to teach outside their training. And so I had to teach math. And I only most recently became friends with algebra again. I wasn't friends with algebra way back when. But the way I approached it was, life is about problem solving, period. And there's a 5-step way to solve problems. And this is just practice for you. It just happens to involve numbers, integers, equations. This is still problem solving. And if you get good at this, you'll be good at problem solving anywhere. So
That's interesting. So you kind of lay out the logistics associated with arithmetic and math and how it can apply to other day things.
yeah, don't stigmatize math. Don't stigmatize it as, oh, I'm no good at math. You know, unfortunately, they may have been told that. They may have actually internalized, I'm no good at math. And I was there to tell them that it's not necessarily about math. It's about solving problems, and you're going to have to do that every day.
So you say you have an online course for teachers in North Carolina. Is this something that other people can go on to and listen to you, or is
It's through a
a
sort of a
closed
consortium. It's the Teacher Education Institute. It's based in Winter Park, Florida. And most of the students that I teach online, believe it or not, this is the internet, are from New York State. It's true. And I actually they actually used to fly me up to New York and Long Island to teach weekend seminars. And so you can imagine their skepticism when someone with a southern accent comes to Long Island and is going to attempt to parlay information to them. So that was my first hurdle. But it was a lot of fun.
I bet it is. So what's the internet site, and do you have to have a passcode to get into it, or?
You've got to, I mean, there are courses, there are probably 30 or 40 courses there. Teachereducation.com is the parent, it's the Teacher Education Institute.
And you contribute to that site then?
I have written and co-authored 5 different courses.
Very nice. I mean, I can see your passion is education.
Well, you know, I think any veteran teacher will tell you that when you invest in kids, even though you might not be guaranteed to see a return, you know that you're doing good work, because those students will come back to you and they'll say, I have one student who's still a good friend of mine, and what I used to do is I gave senior awards, and I would give a very specific award to every senior. And hers was, she came back to me and she said, Mr. Ballard, do you remember what award you gave me? And I'm like,
oh my.
I'm saying, I'm not. And she said, you gave me the Nonconformist of the Year award, because I wanted to honor her desire to be an individual, to be herself.
Right.
And she took that and ran with it. And I'm so proud of her.
We got 2 minutes left, and the last 2 minutes you were talking about rewarding and incentivizing students, you know, positively. Talk to us about that in 2 minutes.
Okay. I think that we have to, first of all, we have to connect with the students. We've got to connect with them, and they have to, we know all about students. but do they really know about us? We have to share our personal interests with them. We always talk about we want to know what they're doing, but we need to make ourselves real. And one of the ways that we do that is, you know, the students believe that teachers were just straight A students. That's a fallacy. That's not true. We all struggled in different areas. And so when you share that, it opens their eyes that you're human. I remember seeing one of my teachers, Kathy Painter, she still lives here. I was raising money for the March of Dimes. I knocked on her door and there she was. And I'm like, you're not in class. You're at home. What are you doing at home? Because I didn't really see her in any other way than as a teacher. And I think today we've got to transcend that. Those students need to see us.
But you also talked about how you reward kids. You say you did a great job.
Right.
And that reinforces their education experience.
You've got to invest in these kids sometimes more than they're willing to invest in themselves. And that's something that you lift them up every single day. And one of those days, one of those times that you compliment them on something that they do, that compliment's going to find fertile ground. And so you've got to do it. You've got to be consistent. You've got to build them up. You've got to catch them doing something right.
You know, Scott, I just realized, I think you're a 24/7 guy, passionate about education. It doesn't stop when the school bell rings in the afternoon. I mean, you still think about how to make those kids even better.
Well, the 3 rules of education as a teacher: reflect, reflect, and then reflect some more on best practices.
Excellent. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Golf for Grants, which Scott is very passionate about. He's here in town actually today. Spoke to a couple groups, and he's going to get this going, and it's going to help the school immensely. We'll be right back.